The Elder Scrolls Online Update 50 is just a little over a week away, and I am so excited for it to get here. I know in my most recent video, I had mentioned that a lot of tanks and healers will want to continue subclassing to remain optimal, and after further reflection and testing, I think this is only partly true. I do think Update 50 will result in some significant meta shifts for all roles, and since my name is Doc, your host for all things healing, I thought it might be a good idea to give you an early rundown of what I think we could expect for healing in Update 50. Let's start by talking about the thing that will result in some of these shifts, class masteries. Now, I've talked about class mastery passives before, but after a few rounds of PTS changes, they're significantly stronger and will be turning pure class healers from a viable, fun option to a stronger than subclassing in a lot of cases option. For those that don't know, class masteries are passive skills that you can use when you have all three of your original class lines equipped. There are 5 of them for each class, but you can only have 2 active at a time, and they don't cost any skill points. When these were first teased, most of them were simply basic stat changes that added some extra weapon and spell damage or resistances or stuff like that. When Update 50 actually releases though, a lot of these passives can offer strong utility and support options that can replace certain sets or skills altogether. I'll give a much more in-depth analytical breakdown of what passives we should care about when Update 50 goes live and how they'll affect gameplay and what we should focus on and stuff like that. For now though, I want to focus on just a few passives from each class that healers need to at least be aware of and explain how they might shake up the meta a bit. Let's just go in alphabetical order and start with the Arcanist. This is a pure class that I think is actually going to be pretty strong for healers. Arcs already had solid healing and shielding output paired with great resource sustain. A lot of these passives are solid, but there's 2 that we especially care about for healers. First is Erudite's Rigor. This upgrades Fate-Woven Armor to inflict minor cowardice on your attacker while granting major vitality to you and your group, and generating ultimate for you depending on the amount of crux you have. While at a first glance, this does appear to be more of a tank passive, healers can still absolutely make use of the major vitality and ultimate generation. And then we have Inkscribe's Verve. This is a big one for arc healers. While in combat, when you heal or overheal a total of 100,000 health, you generate a crux and grant you and your group major force for 10 seconds. This one is huge, because even at a measly 10k healing per second, which is ridiculously easy to do, you can grant your entire group a 100% uptime on major force. This means that groups won't have to rely so heavily on sets like Saxhleel or skills like Aggressive Warhorn when you have a pure Arcanist. Anyway, up next though, let's talk about Dragonknights. So I had originally predicted that I think DKs will fit better into a support DPS role instead of a healer role, and I still stand by that. They've got a couple really good things going for them, but nothing that I think will make it worth taking a pure class DK healer. The only one I want to bring attention to is Lead from the Front. When activating the Storm Voice passive, you grant you and your allies Major Berserk and Major Protection for 1 second per 15 ultimate spent. The main reason I want to bring this up is more so that prior to Update 50, some team comps would have a healer subclass into Daedric Summoning for the Atronach ultimate, which provides a synergy that grants Major Berserk. I haven't tested this passive, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't foresee this being a 100% uptime on Major Berserk, so I do think Atro will still be necessary in most team comps, but I do think that it'll just affect kind of the rotation of ultimates and things like that. Anyway, up next, let's talk about the Necromancer. So for damage dealers, both pure class and base class Necros are actually going to be pretty solid in Update 50 based on my understanding. For healers though, the class mastery passives don't change much for us. So I still see pure Necros being pretty decent at the healer role, but I do think Necros will begin to fit more comfortably into the damage dealer role. Our most notable class mastery is Veil's Forfeit. When you heal someone below 66% health, you can use a corpse-consuming ability on them for 10 seconds. It also extends the duration of major vulnerability you apply by 50%. The second part of that is mostly what we're focused on. Even during the reign of subclassing, a pure class Necro could make for a pretty decent ulti spam build using their Colossus. The passive will extend the duration of the debuff that Colo applies, making for a higher uptime on a skill that you can already cast fairly often thanks to the Necro's solid ulti gen. But up next, let's move on to the Nightblade. For a good long while now, Nightblades have cemented themselves as arguably the best healing class in the game, thanks to their insane ultimate generation, resource sustain, and healing output. Are they still the absolute best of the best? Well, yes and no. Optimized Nightblades still offer the highest ultimate generation in the game, but other classes can compete. And with the prevalence of Nightblade DPS, you may actually start to see some groups move away from Nightblade healers. Still though, that doesn't change the fact that Nightblades will still be among the top healing classes post-Update 50, especially if you're interested in things like ulti-gen builds, or if you're just doing some pugging and you just want to make sure that you've got all your bases covered and stuff like that. There are two class masteries the healers will want to know about. First is Nocturnal Inspiration. It upgrades the Hemorrhage passive to also have a chance to grant you 2 ultimate. Not a crazy high chance, as healers don't typically build into crit, but still, considering how often it can occur, you can definitely make use out of this passive. And Share the Spoils. When you activate the transfer passive, you grant group members resource and ultimate, and it doubles the amount of ultimate we gain. This is going to be absolutely insane for any role, but healers can most definitely make use out of this. When you pair this with the still very strong Catalyst passive, you're going to generate more ultimate than you know what to do with. Up next, let's move on to the Sorcerer. So, Sorcs have always been kind of fairly niche healers, with the exception of utilizing the Atro ultimate for Major Berserk if your team calls for it. I don't think that's going to change much after Update 50. If your group does use a pure class Sorcerer, I see it more likely fitting into the tank role than the healer role. Still though, for my Sorc healers out there, you've got a couple interesting mastery passives. First, Conservation of Energy. It reduces the cost of nearly all abilities and restores resources when it activates. While healers don't typically need that much extra sustain in today's day and age, especially after Update 50, it'll still be nice to have. Then we have Sphere of Influence. When you cast Damage Shield on yourself or an ally, it grants an additional damage shield as well as extra resource recovery. Honestly, this one kind of piqued my interest. Sorcs could potentially cement themselves as alternatives to Arcanist for shielding builds if you wanted to go that route. Not something I think is going to significantly affect us as healers. I don't think the meta is going to change because of it, but still worth noting, still fun. Anyway, let's move on to the Templar. When you take a look at all of the Templar passives, they seem more geared for tanks than anything else. Despite this though, I do think Templars will still be very strong healers, as they do have a couple class mastery passives that will be great for supporting our team in both the healer and the tank role. Firstly is Devout Guardian. While Sacred Ground is active, you gain a damage shield which grants resource recovery. When that shield breaks, you gain 10 ultimate. This is just an all-around really solid blend of survivability, sustain, and ultimate generation. I could see this really coming in clutch in high incoming damage content, or even in PvP, honestly. Then we have Bright's Harbinger. This upgrades Illuminate to also grant 300 weapon and spell damage to your allies and 600 to you. Obviously, this would be a pretty decent damage boost to our allies, and it'll be a great healing boost for you. Templars already do a ton of healing, so this is gonna take them to the next level. I suppose a support damage dealer could also make use of this passive, but if a pure Templar is going to be found anywhere, I suspect it'll be on the healer role. But anyway, let's move on to our final class, the Warden. Now, I've actually been seeing a lot of talk that pure Wardens will actually be best as tanks after Update 50, and honestly, I can see that. Still though, I do think Wardens are still going to be one of the best healing classes in the game, even after Update 50. There are a couple notable class masteries that Warden healers should be on the lookout for. First is Tundra's Maw. This makes it so that when you apply Chill to an enemy, you also apply Major Brittle to them. This is going to be awesome, because as of right now, there's only one other source of Major Brittle in PvE, and that's the Noon Attack monster set. Having it as a passive no less will still offer a lot of flexibility for skills and sets and things like that, so all around, love it. And then we have Bountiful Harvest. This upgrades Nature's Gift to grant you and your allies major heroism and some resources. That's right, you heard that correctly, major heroism. This means that if your group has a pure Warden, we can finally be free of having to use Pearls of Elnathay. I am so ready for Update 50, y'all, I can't even tell you. Okay, anyway, so now that we've covered those passives, I'm sure a lot of people are asking the question, so does this mean subclassing is dead? Well, I think it's a bit too early to tell, but I'm going to lean towards no, but also yes. As of right now, I think your choice of subclassing versus pure classing will largely depend on your group, the content, etc. After Update 50 goes live, there will be benefits and drawbacks to both subclassing and pure classing, making it so that groups can likely use either or even a combination of both to cover all the necessary things they need. I'm sure as well we'll likely see a wider variety of builds, team comps, and things like that outside of the super duper high-end content like score pushing, which means I'm going to have a lot to talk about come June. There were some additional small changes which I'll cover in the full Update 50 patch notes, but nothing that I think is even as close to meta shifting as class masteries are. But anyway, let's move on to my predictions for things like classes, sets, etc. So to start with class composition, and again, it's going to depend on the group, but I'm predicting that for pure class comps, your main healer will likely either be a Warden or a Templar, depending on if you have a Warden tank already or not. For your second healer, I could definitely see either the Arcanist or maybe the Nightblade, depending on what classes your damage dealers are. Sets, I think, will remain mostly unchanged with one exception. One thing that I didn't touch on was the Werewolf rework. It doesn't concern us much as healers, but I think a lot of groups will have one Werewolf in there because it is going to be pretty strong and pretty fun. Most importantly though, the reworked Werewolf can provide group-wide major courage. Yep, that's right. If you have a Werewolf in your group, healers no longer need Spell Power Cure. I wouldn't dismantle it just yet though, because if your group doesn't have a Werewolf for whatever reason, then SPC will still be the best source of major courage. Which set is going to replace SPC? I'm not 100% sure yet. I think a lot of trial groups will default to Pillager's Prophet at first, but Zoran's Masterpiece does seem pretty enticing as well, so, we'll see how it goes when Update 50 drops. Finally, I think traits, enchantments, Mundus, everything else will still remain pretty much the same. If you're moving over to pure classing, just keep in mind that you'll be dropping the siphoning skill line unless you're still playing Nightblade, so you won't really need to bother using the potion cooldown enchantment on your jewelry anymore. Not everybody's using that right now, but I just wanted to throw that out there just as a friendly reminder, because I know some of us will forget to take it off when Update 50 goes live, and by some of us I mean 100% me. So to wrap this video up, I just want to give my preemptive thoughts before these changes hit live servers. At first, when the PTS initially launched, I had pretty much written off these class masteries, and honestly most of the PTS changes as uneventful and expected that healing would carry on exactly as it is. I am pleasantly surprised though to see how much stronger pure classing has become, while also not having an adverse effect on the strength of subclassing as well. If nothing else, I'm really excited to just try something new. I actually deleted and remade a lot of my alt characters just so that I could get them all uniform and ready for Update 50 and just enjoy having something to do. It is most definitely an exciting time in the Elder Scrolls Online right now, and I can't wait to bring you all the in-depth coverage and builds of Update 50 when it goes live. And that was everything we had to talk about today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Let me know what you think of the upcoming changes and if you have any predictions. I'll have a more analytical video of Update 50 when it hits live servers. For now though, this is just more of like my opinion-based video. Don't forget to check out the link in the description to follow me on stuff and join my Discord server. I also want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters as well as my YouTube members. Thank you guys for being awesome and I appreciate y'all. I think all I've got left to say is that I've been Doc. Take care of yourselves, be good to others, don't forget to check out all of the changes linked below, and I will catch y'all in the next one.